Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a fan of Latin music, the sounds of samba are probably deeply, deeply familiar to you. I mean, it's a genre with this globally recognized, totally infectious rhythm. But if you've ever actually tried moving your own body to those rhythms, you know right away that it's an entirely different beast. Watching a professional samba dancer can honestly feel like watching magic. There's this elastic, forward-driving flow that rarely, if ever, lets the dancer just settle into a basic side-to-side groove. So today, we are going to decode exactly how that happens. And that brings us to the big, central question we're unpacking today. Why does samba feel so fundamentally different from every other Latin dance out there? It really is a kinetic illusion. You know, a lot of dances have a specific groove, but samba has this totally unique combination of rhythm, body mechanics, and momentum that just completely sets it apart from its peers on the dance floor. So we're going to treat this explainer as a journey to figure out exactly why your body reacts the way it does when those drums kick in, and how the pros make it look so effortless. Okay, let's dive into this. To properly decode samba, we're going to break down its core structure into a few foundational layers: rhythmic architecture, physical mechanics, and musical phrasing. We're building this from the ground up, literally starting with the beat and ending with a cultural conversation happening out there on the floor. So, let's kick things off with layer 1, the rhythmic architecture. Let's zoom all the way in on the literal drum beat for a second, because that distinctive sensation of samba, it all starts right here, with the rhythm. Samba is typically built around repeating patterns from specific percussive instruments. You've got the surdo, the tamborim, and the rhythmic. When these instruments layer together, they create what we call a propulsive pulse. It is highly, highly syncopated. It's not just some flat metronome ticking away in the background. It's this living, breathing, driving force that just relentlessly pushes the music and the dancer forward. So instead of treating the beat as evenly spaced robotic steps, samba demands something entirely different. As dancers often say, you have to treat the timing as something you ride. You aren't just stepping on the 1, 2, 3, 4. No, you're absorbing those syncopated accents we just talked about. Your motion might actually land slightly before or slightly after the audience expects it to, and it all depends on the musical phrase. You really aren't marching. You're surfing the rhythm. And that brings us to layer 2, spring-loaded mechanics. Now, let's zoom out slightly from the drum beat and focus on the human body. How do specific body parts, like your hips, your knees, and your ankles, mechanically react to that syncopated surfing beat we just established? Well, this right here is the secret sauce. In a lot of standard partner and social Latin dances, the hip action is basically an accent. You do the footwork, and the hips add flair on top. But samba completely flips the script. It does the exact reverse. In samba, the feet and torso movement are the actual engine. They set up the hips' range of motion, and then the hip action itself becomes a driving mechanism that gives the steps their characteristic bounce. It's this crazy inverted relationship that changes absolutely everything about how the body moves through space. Because of that reverse mechanism, the body stays constantly active. You get this continuous tension and release effect flowing directly through the knees, ankles, and hips. That is exactly why samba always looks like it has a constant, gentle spring to it. Even when a dancer is executing steps that look incredibly simple, underneath the surface, this physical loop of tension and release is firing constantly. They are literally spring-loaded. All right, let's move right along to layer 3, gravity and momentum. So if we zoom out again to look at the whole body moving across the floor, how do dancers actually achieve this distinct posture that turns a simple step into a fully realized dance? First, you have to absorb down into the step. Dancers describe this as feeling grounded, but crucially, it is not heavy. Second, you got to keep that torso alive and engaged. And third, you redirect that absorbed energy forward or across the floor. You never just plop your weight entirely onto the next beat. This very specific sequence creates what is known in the dance world as athletic buoyancy. And this brilliantly illustrates why samba is so different. When you contrast samba's weight transfer dynamics with other dances, the difference in that athletic buoyancy is stark. Other dances might rely on a tall, upright sway, or maybe long, smooth, continuous glides. But samba requires moving the center of mass in quick, controlled increments. That is why samba feels like you are watching this rolling momentum rather than just a continuous, soft drift. It's sharp, it's controlled, and it is always moving your center of gravity dynamically. Which brings us to our final layer, layer 4, the musical conversation. Zooming out one final time to the macro level, we have phrasing.
We've looked at the drums, the knees, the gravity. Now let's look at the dancer's overarching connection to the music itself. In samba, phrasing basically means the choreography acts as a mirror to how the percussion calls and answers itself. Skilled performers use their breath, their timing, and their steps to physically respond to musical punctuation. You know, those short motifs, those sudden huge crescendos. They aren't just keeping time to some underlying tempo, they are actively interpreting it. The dancer is literally having a conversation with the drums.
But listen, this conversation doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Originating from Afro-Brazilian traditions and obviously deeply associated with the Brazilian carnival, samba is fundamentally about communal rhythm and celebratory intensity. This cultural backdrop means that even in a highly technical setting, the movement must be exuberant and expressive. It is never just a cold, technical exercise. It's a living, breathing celebration of its origins. And this all builds to our core thesis today. Samba is an entirely distinct physical language. It is built on a specific rhythmic architecture, uniquely spring-loaded physical mechanics of hip and weight interplay, and a deep conversational musical phrasing. When you put all of that together, you realize exactly why it refuses to behave like just another Latin dance. Which leaves us with this final, exciting thought. Now that you know the hidden anatomy behind that incredible momentum, are you ready to stop just counting beats and start truly speaking the language of samba? Next time you hear those drums, I want you to remember the propulsive pulse. Try to find that athletic buoyancy, and just let your body talk to the music. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this changes the way you see and feel the dance floor.